What's going on, everybody? This is your boy Mitch of Mitchspiration. If this is your first time coming to my channel is about life, manhood, motivation, and spiritual development. And if you're back again because you're a part of the gang, I appreciate you. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. Today, I'm a little late with this second installment of Just My Thoughts. It took me a little minute to get to it. A lot's been going on, which I'll share in another video, but I'm here now. If you haven't, I would highly suggest for you guys to go back and check out my video I did in regards to Clay from Love is Blind. My plan was to do a follow-up to the woman that he ultimately didn't end up marrying, AD. And so this video is kind of going to be like my letter to AD and women who kind of share the similar story or narrative that AD has. So I really have like 4 talking points, and I'm gonna try to get to them pretty quick. But I don't have my laptop today. I got my phone, so I definitely want to make sure I hit these talking points, man. So this is like a verbal letter to AD, but also some tips or things for her or women like her to consider when it comes to relationships and marriage and things like that. First, don't limit yourself to your type. Types are typically the guy you don't need. I know early on in the show, AD expressed the type of guy that she would actually go for, and it just so happened that Clay kind of met those standards even before they actually met in person. And I think sometimes we have types because we know if we have somebody who fits our mold, they're less likely to like focus on things like accountability, making sure we're doing what we're supposed to do, and things like that. Whereas when we focus on the person we need as opposed to the person we want, those two categories offer a lot of different things. And more times than not, your type is going to be based on the person that you want and not necessarily what you need. And a lot of times the person that you want or your type, you kind of are choosing that person for shallow reasons. They may fit your physical mode. They may, I guess, compliment you physically. They might compliment your look physically, or whatever the case may be. And if we're going to be honest, a lot of that type stuff is really physically based, which is kind of the opposite of what the Love is Blind show was about. Although AD was very open to, you know, foregoing that thought process, entering into the process for Love is Blind. And it just so happened that like Clay was her type, but I think a lot of that had to do with like his talk game. She was used to talking to guys who have the gift of gab, may or may not be as genuine or as sincere as they should be when they're sharing different aspects about themselves with the woman that they're interested in. So I think she might have got lost in the sauce or caught up in all that. But just moving forward, I think AD's learned her lesson. And I do think that like in the back of her head, she probably still has that type. But I also feel like she's made some strides to like go after somebody who she knows she will actually need in life and not somebody she wants because they fit her mold. So don't limit yourself to your type. Number 2, this was huge. Be aware of family dynamics and family trauma. I think the one biggest red flag that AD should have paid more attention to and ultimately, like honestly, walked away from was Clay's narrative about always feeling like he would struggle with being loyal or faithful to a woman in a relationship because of the things he encountered with his dad. I'm not gonna go back down that rabbit hole about Clay's story. You just gonna have to look at my previous video. But if you're watching this, I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. Family dynamics are very, very important. And I'll tell you a personal thing. Like, so when I met my wife, one of the first things that I knew was that her father was passed away. And so I asked her like, hey, I know your dad's passed, but is this a situation that you have healed from, or are you in a space where you can move forward in an actual relationship with me without placing those involuntary expectations of things you would have wanted your dad to do for you on me? And so we had a really transparent conversation, and she pretty much told me like, yeah, like I'm in a space where you know, understanding that my dad is no longer here. And of course, I think about him all the time and things like that. But she said, you know, grief is an ongoing process, but I understand that I also want a long-lasting relationship. I want marriage. So me and my wife actually had to have that talk to get to that space, which I appreciated her honesty about, because honestly, if she wasn't ready, I was willing to stay in relationship with her as far as boyfriend and girlfriend, but I probably would have prolonged like the process of like buying a ring and getting ready to do the marriage thing until, I saw things that I needed to see and I found out that she was in a more prepared space. So I think AD showing glimpses of being a good, I mean, not AD, I think Clay showing glimpses of being a good man, but also constantly like fooling himself into believing that he can never be that for the long term is something that AD should have paid attention to, because yes, as a woman, you need to affirm your man, but sometimes there are just processes that men or just people need to go through on their own. And I think that whole trauma that Clay dealt with his father is something that he needed to go through on his own, which he's doing that now through therapy. So I'm super happy for Clay for that. So yeah, man, paying attention to family dynamics and family trauma is super, super big. And I know like AD was heartbroken at the wedding when Clay told her no, but in hindsight, he actually did her a favor, because there were two options. Either Clay says yes and she goes into that relationship still dealing with those processes that Clayton had in place, or Clay says no, and even though it's a sad moment, whatever, AD can walk away knowing that like she doesn't have to take on that burden, because Clay isn't confident enough in himself to know he can be loyal and exhibit those behaviors. So even though she was hurt in the moment, because you're in public, it's embarrassing to be at the altar and somebody say, and Clay didn't, and once again, Clay didn't say no. He just said, I don't think it would be mature of me at this point to say yes, which I agree with. But of course, when you're in that moment, it's embarrassing. All you hear is the word no, real talk. So that's what that was. And because of that, this brings me to my third point. AD was very hard on herself, and she constantly blamed herself and viewed herself as not enough because Clay didn't choose her. And I want all women to understand, all people to understand this. Just because the person you hope chooses you ultimately doesn't, that doesn't mean that it diminishes your value. You are still who you are, and you have to be 100% comfortable and happy with who you are, whether you're single, in a relationship, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? Because like I used to tell women all the time when I was dating, like whether we together or not, my train don't stop moving. You know what I mean? I know who I am. I know what I bring to the table, and it's important for, everybody to have that realization and be comfortable with that. So, for AD to view herself as not enough and things like that, I just felt like she was doing herself a disservice, because she's really an amazing person, but it just wasn't her time. And when your time comes, you realize why everybody else didn't work, and why the one you thought you were in love with and the one you thought was going to be the one ultimately wasn't the one for you. How do I know? Because I've been there. When I finally realized that my wife was my one, I felt stupid for thinking that, oh, all this time I thought I was going to be with this person. All this time I thought I was going to be with that person. And in reality, my wife is my person. And so I think that makes a world of difference. It's hard to accept that until you experience it, though. So my hope is for that anybody watching this video, that you have the opportunity to like experience that and be able to make that happen for yourself. So if you haven't been in that space, I think it's important for you to do it, because it does matter and it is valuable. So yeah. And then lastly, being okay with being alone and being content by yourself before marriage. This is such a huge game changer, and I kind of alluded to it earlier. You will never be 100% satisfied until you learn how to be satisfied with you. Know your value. If you don't know your value, take time to learn yourself. Don't don't think of who you are based on other people's opinion of you, because it's easy to put on the front or constantly give your best self in situations when you're around other people. But it's those moments when you by yourself, where there's nobody around and all it is you and that mirror, that's when you need to start confronting who you are, good, bad, and ugly. Because until you do that, you can fake the funk and fool people all day long, but the ones who know gonna know. And ultimately, you gonna know you being fake, whether you wanna admit it or not. But you have to be 100% at peace and happy with who you are before you get in a relationship or anything in that capacity, because if you don't, it's going to be a detriment to what could potentially happen for you. I was in a place where, personally, I questioned who I was at times, but I had to remember yo, I'm really that good dude. Like I'm a good dude. I'm a solid person, and I deserve to be in connection with a solid person. But I just you do solo dates. That's not just for women. Like I would enjoy life on my own. Go to the movies. Go out to eat. Travel. All those different things. You got to experience that by yourself first. I think that's a big component of just understanding your value and self-worth. So when you do meet that person, you're able to be your more authentic self, and you bring so much more life and joy to the relationship. So that's really it, y'all. I didn't want to over talk, and because y'all know I can go, but I didn't want to over talk about this. But of course, we've seen the reunion episode, and everybody's truths have been shared, and processes they've, going through now have been shared. So it's good to see everybody from that cast coming to new realizations about themselves, understanding that the person they were in the beginning of that process isn't who they are now, and understanding that for the future, everybody has work to do. So I think that's important. You're never going to be, the same person 10 years from now. Like you're constantly changing. Your likes change. The things you don't like change. The things you find joy in change. So it's a constant journey of self-discovery. So I'm encouraging everybody who's watching this video, male or female, to really take into consideration the things I brought to the table, especially for my women, because I want to see you guys happy. I want to see you guys win, and you deserve it. You know what I mean? But timing does matter. Knowing yourself matters. So, you have to learn how to change your mentality when you're in relationships. Just because a guy does you wrong doesn't mean all guys are the same. You have to start being a better judge of character, stop focusing just on your type, and really focus on somebody who can add more value to your life. And I think you'll see some things change for the better. So with that said, this is my second installment of Just My Thoughts, man. I'll holler at y'all later.